Duane Thompson is the owner, operator of T2 Land and Cattle Company, a family operation in the Parkland region south of Keller, Saskatchewan. It has always been a mixed operation of cows, feedlot, forages, grains, pulses, and oilseeds. The forages are rotated around half the land base, and annual crops are seeded on the other half on a 10 to 15-year rotation. Soil health has become a major focus of the operation, and as the soil improves, the ability to support more households follow. Their main goal is to build a profitable, sustainable business that provides a desirable lifestyle for all involved, and to have future generations that chose to join the team. Welcome, Duane.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much. I always enjoy coming to Manitoba. I've had the privilege of coming and getting to know many of you, and I've made some good friends, and I always enjoy it. I feel like I can relate to this crowd well. I'm humbled that I'm asked to come and tell our story, but it's a story that I love and I live and breathe it. And so I guess, you know, I think a lot of us would consider ourselves people of the dirt. And, you know, my brother and I, we grew up in exactly the same household. We're expected to contribute in exactly the same way. And yet, it just wasn't in him. But it's something that is just always been something in me. And my dad and I related well in that. I've followed 3 generations in our area. Our family's been there for about 125 years on one side or the other of our family. And I take the role of the next 2 generations following me very seriously, and fostering to try to continue a sustainable system. So our system management approach is certainly not something new. It's something that's been around for forever, but it's certainly not as common as it was 50 years ago, where you had multi-enterprises and people, you know, there's various reasons for that too, and I think, you know, top of mind is just life expectations now. We have quite a few different expectations. Used to be, I remember when I was a kid, it was in the summer, you got to the lake a couple times, you got to the local ball tournament, and you put up hay for the rest of the summer. And that's just what you did, and that's what we expected to do. But it is a little different now. We have different expectations, and the fact that our kids are only, you know, us and our kids are only about 2% of the population makes a big difference. So there's a good chance they're going to marry outside of the ag business. And there's a good chance that a lot of their friends are going to be at the lake all summer or skidooing all winter when we're feeding cows or putting up hay. So it's quite a difference. You know, one of the greatest concerns of agriculture, of course, is the loss of our topsoil. And I think a mixed enterprise operation with forages and grazing and annual crops is a great way to create a sustainable system. We've been soil testing for quite a few years, and we've managed to double and a little more than double the average organic matter in our area on the land that we've been doing our system for the longest. And so I feel real good about that. And you know, the interesting thing is there's never been a time that food producers have had to explain, market, or even justify what we do. In a very short period of time, we've gone from most people having a very solid connection with their food, and as I mentioned, now there's only about 2% producing for the other 98%. And some of them take it upon themselves just even to villainize feeding them. So I find that pretty interesting. But I believe a mixed enterprise production system can provide a profitable and somewhat self-insured, desirable lifestyle for multi-families across several generations. It can be profitable. It can be a profitable carbon sink and provide a valuable, vibrant ecosystem for our wildlife and all of nature. And when I So when I talk about the across the generations, my mom and dad just left the operation a year and a half ago. And so to me, they lived like a fairy tale life. And to be able to be on the land that Dad bought his first quarter of land when he was 18 years old is, it was very fulfilling for him. I lost him this fall. He had to hang on until the crop was in the bin. And then that evening I was able to hold his hand as he passed. So that was truly fulfilling for me. So I'll get on with that. There's our crew, a picture that was taken this fall. Two of which our two sons are involved in the operation. I've got to find out which way to go here. Kelleher, Saskatchewan is the little star there, center of the world. Yep, beacon, center of my world. And it's always been home for us. Like I say, on my mom's side, my great-grandfather came in the late 1800s and came to that area, so it's home. There's a tool that we use every day with our crew. It's in our coffee room where we start our day. It gives you an idea of the pothole parkland country. Some people look at that and say, "You farm that?" And yeah, we do. And in the wet years, from August of '02 to 2017, it was pretty wet. And we couldn't even, we call this road here the Cowboy Highway, and we couldn't even go up that stretch. But we're very fortunate to have it mostly contiguous. So we've got 8 sections here, and my son's place is here, my oldest son, and we've got some here, some over here, and we rent this. So we've got just a little over 9,000 acres that we run our mixed system on. That's our logo. My little sister, I asked Bernie Brown if it would be okay if I took his big boots, and my little sister's very good with a pencil, and she drew the little boots on there and put the brand on. And it's very near and dear to our heart. And my grandfather came home from the First War, and a little ways away from our yard is where he settled. And in 2021, we became a Century Farm. So my first full year at home was 1989. And as many of you know, there was considerably different farming practices in '89. And that's out my folks' dining room window. And the feedlot is somewhere back behind that dust. And the dust was rolling. '89 was a pretty dry year. '88 was too. And my dad was pretty innovative. He was on the Save Our Soils board in Saskatchewan, SOS they called it. And so he was front and center and thinking, we got to do something about this. Our crop rotation is a 10 to 14 year rotation, 5 to 7 years in forages. There's a list of the different things that we put down with our forages. We use a designated wet spot area, like you saw all those sloughs. We'll take the 60-foot Valmar Harrow bar and spread around that. And our grazing system is a planned grazing system. We keep all our grass together on our land base, and we're following it around in a clockwise pattern. So we take grass out at the back end and put grass in at the front end every 5 to 7 years. Our annual crops are pretty typical for our area: canola, wheat, barley, oats, peas, all direct seeded. We use both a disc drill and a regular air drill. The Concord was very popular, I think, in this area at one time, and we still love it because when we go direct into the forages, it does a really good job with oats and kind of levels out some of the molehills and things. And I feel one of the bigger benefactors of our cattle side is actually our grain enterprise, because that soil is built up and a protection put on top of it to make it more resilient for all the different weather conditions that are coming along. And about I'm going to say 60% of our nitrogen is free. We have a very strong component of legumes in our forage stand, clovers and alfalfas, and we grow peas, and of course none of them need nitrogen. So in 2022, these are my numbers from 2022. We grazed about 1,250 cows. We used about 24 quarters of high legume pasture, and we grazed from June 1 to about November 1. We put up winter feed on that 24 quarters, of which 1,030 acres was haylage and 320 of silage. And that's just sort of some of the yields that we had that particular year. And we also used all the crop aftermath of every crop. We use canola chaff. All the residues are used in some way by the animals. A lot of times, people will say, well, you got all those cows, we can't do that with our herd. So I scaled it back to 100 head. And I don't know whether you can go, take this to the bank or not, but it's one way of looking at our operation scaled back. So instead of, for 100 head, it would be only just 2 quarters. For the haylage and the winter feed and the grazing, and just down that. I thought, just try to make it relative because, like I say, a lot of times people will come up with a reason why they can't do something, but just something for you to think about. So our official start of calving up until this year was April 26th, but this year I'm going to miss the snowstorm and we're going to go May 1st. That's, that took me 35 years to figure that out, but I think we're going to miss it this year. But I'll tell you how that goes after. But a big thing is, for some reason, in we can have up to 20% of the calves on the ground on that first calendar day. And so last year, we all know what the middle of April was like. It was pretty humbling. And I feel that extra week, it's going to still have us calving about the middle of April, and we all know what can happen in April and May. So this is what I like to see. That's about the perfect picture for me at calving time. I was a huge fan of Bud Williams, and I was sitting with Bud one day, and I said, Bud, I'm doing this, and this with the calves, and it's wearing me out, and it's dangerous for hired help, and he looks right at me and he says, why don't you just let them live instead of making them live? And so our youngest son got pretty sick in the middle of May one year, and the cows went out. They had to calve on their own. They didn't get calved, tagged. They didn't get any of the stuff we'd been doing. And now he's 26, so that'd be 21 years ago, and we've been letting them live ever since. So it does change our marketing system. They don't get vaccinated or anything until weaning time. Weaning time is November. I'll get to that later. But the perfect day of calving is a nice sunny day when you drive around and you see everybody doing their thing and you don't have to do anything with them. And we have lots of twins. And it was a very busy one day, and I had a set of twins, and I wasn't too sure how I was going to get everything done, so I had a piece of rope in my vehicle, and I tied one back leg of each of them together, and it worked like a charm. So I got some dog cables and some dog collars, and I always have them in our calving vehicle. We tagged the twins. Anything that needs attention gets a tag. And so we strap their back legs together, make sure they both have colostrum, and we've had them like that together on mum for a week sometimes until we need one to put on another cow. It's very handy, and it's just one of those things because we all know what it's like at calving time. It can get pretty busy. And this is how we'll load them up. We'll just take our ambulance and set the panels up. This back panel at the back of the trailer is just open with the door. We'll take a long rope and drag, whether it be a dead calf or a live calf, drag it in the front of the truck. This is open. Have somebody standing there. And when somebody pulls that calf this way, goes in the trailer and out the man door, this guy goes around, closes the gate behind. You can see that panel there. and then we just quietly work with them and load them up. And once you realize you don't have to get it done right now, and you can relax, and if she makes a few turns in there and you just be real quiet with them, it works pretty well. I'm not going to say 100%, but it works pretty well. We do use a horse when Holly's out there. Holly was my cowboy, and she and I saw the world in quite a similar angle, and she was with us for about 3 years until this nice young man came to my office one day and asked if she could go to their place, and he was a pretty nice guy, so I had to say yes. Yeah. At calving time, we put straw bales out. It's a portion of their ration, to the base roughage, and we put them on what I call sour spots, just around sloughs and alkali spots, and part of the regenerative thing, we can really improve places by doing that. And a lot of these places we've improved places that were pure white with foxtail. And by doing that and planting some specific wet spot mixes, we've brought them into production. Some stuff that works here is palatable for the animals. We start grazing either side of June 1st. And of course, the legumes are pretty rich at that time. But spring isn't our biggest challenge for bloat. It's the biggest challenge for bloat. It can be spring if you get a frost, because then those wilted leaves can be pretty potent. But for the most part, the grass is growing as fast as the legumes, and it pretty much dilutes it off. But a really important thing is having Bovatec in our mineral mix, and it has mitigated the bloat risk considerably. Again, I won't say 100% because bloat is a very humbling thing. And as soon as you think you got it figured out, you're going to find the surrender leg in the air. And so the month of May is very busy. Of course, we're seeding 3,000 to 4,000 acres, and our oldest son has really taken to the grain side, and our youngest son has taken to the cow side. So it's working out pretty good, and I'm taking a little more time off. Well, my favorite crop in the whole world is forages. A crop of forages like this, it rivals a beautiful yellow canola crop for me. And this is regrowth. This was a calving field, and this is regrowth in the end of July. So we can grow a lot of forages, and I mean, of course, rainfall makes you look real smart, but even in years where you have limited rain, a managed grazing system grows a tremendous amount more forage than kicking them out and going to the lake. We still go to the lake, though. But you're going to see lots of pictures of cows and grass because that's my favorite thing. And the cows are on a rotation 1 to sometimes 4 days, but most of the time 3 days. As you saw, our land is all contiguous. Once calving season is done, at least by the 1st of July, at least by the 1st of July, we want to have all the cows in one herd. And so for a couple of years, when Holly was home, she thought, well, let's run 2 herds. And she was the stock person, so I said, okay, we'll do that. But one thing I know is when we run the entire herd together, and you run 1,000, 1,200 cows in one group, you can manage grass a lot better. And we have the privilege of that contiguous land base, so that, all we do is raise a wire, and we grow a lot of grass. So that's a really expensive invention. All it is a propane tank with a little piece of pipe on it that fits a rebar, and you pop that in, and then at the top, you clamp the wire to the rebar so that the whole assembly is hot, and then they don't rub it off, because they love to rub it off, and it fits in any little nook. It's not this long pole that you have to, it fits over a picket, so you have to pick the right size picket. And the dung beetles, it's some people question whether this is right or not, but there's been times I've had to not talk like I like to do, because the dung beetles are flying around, and I've had them flying around so much they get in your mouth. And so as much as I don't like that, I like that, because we know what they're doing for us, and we know what they're doing for the dirt. The other thing about that manure, I mean, that's just shit, right? But it's, manure is our best indicator of what's going on yesterday with the cows for your nutrition. So especially in the fall when we're grazing neighbors' stubble land or whatnot, we pay real close attention to the manure. And if we're getting that wafery kind of more separated manure, we know that we've got to bump up the protein. So you want to really pay close attention to your manure. Whenever we're checking cows, we're looking at manure. That just shows the integrated. This is nothing new for you guys. I mean, it's cropland and grazing land all together. Something that we do when we have to move cows across a road is we'll make a trap. So we'll put sheep fence for a trap, and then right here was panels across the road, and then sheep fence, so we can move the animals a half a mile or a mile to these other blocks that are a little bit separated. And then when the calves come back to go looking for mum where they last had a drink, they get trapped, and then mum can come back for them. And we've got a couple places that's on a fairly busy road at the bottom of the hill, and that lets us sleep a whole lot better the night after a cow move. We pump water out of sloughs into tankers, water systems, or we've got several different versions of these guys. I really like pumping water, and the effect on they choose it. In the previous photo you saw the cows, there was not too many of them looking at the surface water, and the calves I think benefit the most. They not only benefit from clean water and not having to go in the mud, but they go to the water bowl at weaning a lot better too. And I found that we don't have near as many calves that we got to go and show them where the water bowl is. That's a valve that it took me 25 years to figure this valve out, but that's what I've settled on for a valve that can keep the troughs full, because the number one thing when you're providing water to cows in a tanker or a trough is they can never fight for it. If they fight for it, you got trouble, and you got big trouble. You got foot rot, you got pneumonia, you got pink eye, you got anxiety of the herd. All those things are just bad from front to back. And so this valve, all it is a 2-inch one-way valve, and a couple hours in the shop, and it can give you 2 inches of water. As many cows can drink around that system as can fit, and the water never goes down to the bottom. There's always water there. And when I had to learn it the hard way, the cattle would go up, and it would start sipping, and the valves didn't have enough capacity. And then the anxiety around the water system, and about 4 times a day, the whole herd would go woof to the water system, and the fight was on, because they knew there was going to be no water there. And that's a really big thing. And so making sure that you've got enough flow with a big valve is really important when you're providing water. And all that is a valve off of Amazon, and I cut the one end off so the bolt can reach in and push the valve open. And those valves, they're only, well, I think that one's like $20, and they work really well. And the brass ones are about $250, so these ones are much more economical. And then of course you got to protect them, because the cows like to wreck things. We have all of our land base plumbed as well with 2-inch water line. And so we have valves all over the place, and that's our expensive protection system at our valve junctions. Take some old freezers, and it's really good in the winter. And when we get towards fall, when things are starting to freeze, that we backfill that around. Old wash machine does the same thing, and just protects it, keeps it from freezing up in the early fall. And then we have to blow them out in the fall as well. And some guys say you don't have to blow them out, but We've got probably about 40 miles of pipe in the ground now, and I really don't want them to start having lots of trouble, so we blow them out. So the legume effect, I think the biggest concern of grazing animals is bloat. And I say that pretty confidently because I've been doing it my whole life, and it's still the thing I hate the most. You go out there, first thing you see is the surrender leg in the air, and she's right by the road. But yet I know the value of it. You just can't not have legumes in a stand. And that stand, I took our forage agronomist from the university out, and he said, from this picture to this picture, which is 50 feet away, you can actually see the line behind me. That's where the harrow bar with the clovers and alfalfa missed this triangle. And our forage specialist figured there was 6 to 8 times more forage than the pure grass in a stand. So to me, that's pretty significant. So I'm gonna give you lots of reasons why I think you gotta have alfalfa and try to block out that image of that cow with her leg in the air. But research has found that high legume stands will yield you 80 pounds more calf. A little bit of math, an extra $280 at $3.50 a pound. The nitrogen that you don't have to spread on the land. I mean, nitrogen prices are changing all the time. That's just some numbers to show what it could be on 100 cows. The regrowth in dry years, to me, is really important. There's been years where the grass just didn't regrow, but those deep roots, they regrew the alfalfa, and we had a second pass on the alfalfa in the dry years. We had a year where we had 4 inches of rain. My dad was a crop reporter for 45 years, and it was the least amount of rain that he ever reported. And we still had grass until the end of October that year. And then we tramp in, it's part of our insurance system. Like I'm really big on being self-insured. So I love to see a cow herd go out and tramp half and eat half and put that litter and that armor on the ground. Because I know that it's money in the bank. And that's one thing my dad and I did have a struggle with, because stockpiling grass for the next year or tramping grass were pretty taboo to him. But we learned to agree to disagree. Some people will say, wow, that alfalfa, it's no good in the fall. Just all the leaves fall off. Yeah, they fall off. But they sure do, those stems sure do collect snow too for the next year. So our first year of, after we plant a forage stand, we put up silage. We grow 40-10 silage peas along with Sadash wheat, and we chop it. We've had really good results with that. That particular crop was 17.4% protein, lots of peas in there, and that gives you a tremendous flexibility when you're utilizing your byproducts in the wintertime, all your annual crop byproducts. And then there's our nitrogen in those peas. It's putting it into the ground for the next year. We operate on a considerably different topsoil level than a lot of places in Manitoba, especially like the Red River Valley. We operate on this much topsoil. It's not much. And when you get those big winds that blow it off, it's pretty valuable. So building soil is pretty important to me. Right where I had this handful was a hill that, after that windstorm in '89, my dad sent my brother out with a scraper to scrape the sloughs out and put it back on the hills. And then he planted it to grass, and it was that way for about 30 years. But we put it back into the system. We started feeding cows on it, putting either McKee stacks or Heston stacks up on top of it and grazing it, and we've built that soil up there on a real poor piece of land. Gabe, I've followed Gabe a bit. Think the world of Gabe. He's a very insightful fellow. Came out to our place, and I asked him, what do you think of the system? And he said, well, he says you might put a a polycrop within the middle of your 5 to 7 year rotation. But other than that, he figured the system was working. And habitat. I mean, that guy and his family, people would tell you that that guy wouldn't be around an operation like ours. But I'll say that that guy and his family are there because of our system, not despite our system. Just like the rest of you, because I always tell our environmental detractors that any acre of grassland, no matter how it's managed, is better than an acre of asphalt and concrete. Period. And then we can go better from there. And then harvest comes along, and the combine pilot's nightmare. We pull those little chaff wagons around. Combine jockeys hate those things. Every time I push the button, I hear a little cha-ching, because it's dollars in my pocket and dollars in the system and building the land. But guys that have been running a combine without them, they don't like them much. But to me, I don't think I could run cows without our byproducts. That's our two sons a couple of years ago, Cole in the red hat and Adam to my right there. And that's our grandson. That's Cole's. It's our first grandson. And to me, that picture just says it all for what I think. You know, that's the boots, both pairs of boots. And there's my father and his Uncle Adam. And he's looking on. And that's a really special picture to me. And I took him out of the combine that day and I put him down and I just saw him looking over there and I took that picture and so that's a pretty special picture. Weaning mid-November, we preg check then, put the calves in the feedlot. We still do the feedlot weaning. It works for us. An important thing for us though is feeding the cows out in the field what the calves are going to be eating when mom's gone. So they're getting used to it for about 2 weeks to 10 days prior to going into the feedlot, getting used to it. And I don't know if any of you have milked a cow and drank the milk from the cow you're milking, but I remember when I was a kid when the cow used to get into pigweed. And that was foul tasting milk. And I believe that calves, because a lot of them had never even eaten silage or smelt it, but the cow, when it goes through the milk, I believe that it has a taste and they adapt to it, and then they start eating it a bit, and the weaning process is considerably simpler. And this year, I think we lost a couple of little calves when a cold snap hit, and we needled about 6, and that was it. Then we divide the herds up into 2 herds, herd 1 and herd 2. So we've got our heifers and our first calvers, second calvers, olds and thins in one herd, and our herd 1, which is the base herd that should be able to work for a living, and we feed them accordingly with a balanced ration from a nutritionist. Take the feed truck out to the chaff piles. Sometimes you have to push a little snow, and you got to have a good operator. And dogs are really, we love dogs around our place, especially those two. They're hard to separate. And that's what a chaff pile looks like when we're done grazing it. If you've had perfect conditions, and if you've only put them in there for 5 days. If you kick them out onto a whole quarter section and you don't and you don't feed on it or whatever, you're going to have trouble. And our goal is to clean it up so that we can direct seed through it. And we can accomplish that. But if you get a windstorm, a snowstorm, give them too big a piece where they'll do what cows do. I mean, they eat a little and they sleep on it and they manure on it. But that's our goal. And then electric fence. All of our fences are electric fence. Critical that you have the cattle trained to electric fence prior to winter. You cannot run cows on electric fence if they don't know it and know the shock value, because they're not grounded well enough and you're going to have a lot of trouble. But if you have 12,000 volts there, that's a pretty good education value. And that's just a Fred Flintstone wire roller. Had an old neighbor that was just loved to work in a shop, and he was 80 odd years old, and he built me that. It's highly engineered. That's off an old pull-type versatile swather, and that's the littlest pulley I could find on a Princess Auto motor. Those spools are just exactly copied from the spools that you buy the electric wire on. And in fact, they were made in Manitoba here. I'll think of the name. Can't remember the outfit that made them for me. But Grant Housey makes 7L. Yeah, thank you. And but it was the people that Grant bought the place from had an outfit that made them for me. So we can probably find out if anybody wants to get. You might be able to get some made still. And so it's so nice to be able to take a steel spool and not have it spring apart on you. Again, dogs. That was a Sunday. I was the only one around, storming out. Cows came through, and they were all over the grid road. And without dogs that day, it wouldn't have been much fun. And they worked so hard. That girl turned 14 on Christmas Day. Now she doesn't work like that anymore, but she sure put in a hard life, and they're wonderful. So I had the privilege of going to Tanzania and being on the Serengeti. And everybody's looking at the wonderful zebras and the giraffes and the lions, and I was looking at the grass. And it was calving time, and when we pulled onto the Serengeti, the ground was pretty harvested, but about 85% of the herd had gone by. And then in about 3 hours, and that's the rotation that's been going on for thousands of years, round and round and round. And basically each one of these arrows, we would have some of them like dead animals or whatever, but we can manage these. We can manage the exits from the herd, whereas Mother Nature manages it there. But 3 hours after seeing that harvested grass, we were in this. And so when we stopped, I wanted to walk out into that. And when I got a little ways out, our guide, he was a little nervous, and he said, "You better get back in here, because we got a little farther out, and he showed me a black thing whipping like this, and it was a full-grown adult lion in the grass. But what is amazing to me is that's thousands of years of that rotation, of them harvesting that way on a density grazing system, moving on, letting it regrow for a year, and having this. Fascinating. I was fascinated. And that guy, he's part of the reason that they kept moving around, but they also kept moving around because of the grass. And that's what they were tilling the ground with. And, but they also ended up with that because of their systems. They've tilled this land, highly eroded. It was in a floodplain area, and they ended up with that. We could have that too, but it's all in our management systems. And I was fascinated by it. Everybody loved the lions and everything, but I went out, and when I looked there, they had the forbs, they had the legumes, they had the grasses, and they had a production system that was fully sustainable. Fascinating. So those two pictures are 26 years apart. There's quite a few additions, and one gone. And it's so fulfilling. Life can get busy. And when I saw that, I thought, I think most of us can relate to that. We can get really busy, but if we structure our system, I saw a thing on Twitter, I think it was, where this couple was sitting on the beach, and the heading was, "This could be me, but I have cows." Don't even go there. You're just giving yourself an excuse not to live. You got to structure your business. You got to make it work. You got to figure it out. There's probably somebody within a half hour that's thinking the same thing, that when you're away for a week having a break, they might do your chores and you can do the same. So I don't buy that excuse. Just because you have cows doesn't mean you can't have a life. Just because you have a mixed farming operation doesn't mean you're tied to the place. You can still, and honestly, I'll bet you 90% of this room don't want to sit on the friggin' beach for all winter. We quite like what we do. You know, that's what makes us real different from a lot of the population. We love what we do. You know? Does it get better than that? Sure, yes. There's days when you're dead tired and you can't keep your eyes open. I wouldn't do a thing different. So take some time, watch the odd sunset, take a bottle of wine up to your favorite spot. You don't have to go away to do that. We don't do it near enough, but we do it once in a while. I took my mom up to that hill here the other day and just watched the sunset. It's a pretty nice thing. Every one of you got that spot. There's always something to be thankful for. And that one, cowboys tend to be a little bit different mindset, and we don't run a lot of shiny equipment, and we brought a pretty beat up pickup truck. But I'd say we got something that a lot of people don't see. And that's our gems. We got. Sure, I was privileged to have 4 healthy children that had, we've got 5 grandchildren inside of 22 months, and 1 more on the way. And Paula and I expanded our house just so that we can hold the family for the special occasions. Paula's the glue, you know. She puts on a meal for 22 people or 25 people regularly, and she was a nurse for 30 years, and she retired from that from a couple of years ago, and it's a wonderful life. So with that, I'll take some questions. Don't make them too hard. The question is, when do we castrate the calves? So we weed in the middle of November, and then we get them all settled in and content in the feedlot. We get them processed with their first round of vaccinations before Christmas, and that was first week in December this year. Then when they come through because we use a bander, we give them Covexin with tetanus. And the second round, they get a band, and that's going to be first week in February. I'm sorry. So we use the electronic auction market, the team sale, and we sort them ourselves and try to get them in as close to load lots as possible. We had been selling all of them at the end of March, first part of April, depending on just conditions. This year, we just sold our steers and we grassed our heifers, and there was $500 on the table doing that. And I think we're probably going to look at that again. I believe we're in a really good time in the cattle industry, guys. I really do. I mean, I've always been the eternal optimist in this business. I was just going to be when I went back to Mom and Dad's operation, I was just going to be a cowboy. And I wasn't going to buy another combine. We were going to just put it all down to grass and we were going to graze. But then BSE came along. And I'll never forget, between Christmas and New Year's in 2005, and I was feeding CPS wheat to background the calves, and a grain buyer drove in the yard. And he said, "Do you realize that stuff's worth $7 a bushel?" And I said, "Sold." Because $7 a bushel in 05 was a really good price. And so, the experience of BSE changed my notion quite a bit, and it really reaffirmed the mixed concept to me. And I enjoy the mixed concept. Our goal, Paula and I, and my dad too, my dad and Mom always had the dream, which most people do in this room, that if they had a child that wanted to continue the business, that they would build a business that could do it. And so that's what we always told our kids. is that whoever wants to come back and be in this business, you're welcome to come back and we'll figure it out. But the goal is that any or all of you to come back and we'll figure it out. And it looked like maybe we were going to have 3 for a while. But when Holly went off to the Sparrow operation at Vanscoy, we got 2. And I was very interested in the previous speech because something that's really near and dear to my heart is succession planning. And, you know, I'm going to tell you something that everybody knows here as well, that the worst day in your life is the day when you go head to head with one of your parents. The worst day of my life was the day that I was cocked back to hit my dad, and he had a shovel in his hand, and he's going to whack me. The worst day of my life, bar none. But you know, we both had the same end goal in mind. We both wanted the same thing. Just the road getting there is not easy. And it doesn't have to be that way. So I love hearing people telling their stories and hearing the questions from you guys, because I still only know enough about it to be dangerous, but there's a lot of good people to help us with it. You know, in our operation, a high-power supplement, a high-power polycrop, is best utilized as a silage. Every feed ingredient that we put labor, diesel fuel, and iron into, I want to consider a supplement. And one phrase in this business that has never resonated with me is the term just cow feed. Nothing should be just cow feed other than straw and chaff. That's just cow feed. Anything that you got to put cost into, you better treat it as a supplement, and you better try to make the very best products you can, and then that way you've got all kinds of options. So that's where your polycrops really shine for me, and that's whether that 17.4% protein polycrop really gave us a lot of options. Yeah, and also just really good for the dirt. Yeah. Sorry. You know what? The guy that does that is the one he's not that smart, and he works a lot of hours in a day, and he's there before everybody else, and he's there after everybody else, but I'm not going to name any names. You know, in this business, I've always made the reference that the thing I love about this business the most is, like, I'm not a very smart guy, and there's no silver bullet in this business. So, you know, when you get a researcher that's really intelligent, brilliant, I'll never be that guy. But we also stump them with how many things we're not too bad at. And so there's no silver bullet in this business, but it's like a shotgun blast. It's a whole bunch of BBs, and if you try and get them as close together as you can, you're going to blow a bigger hole. And I think, you know, a mixed enterprise operation that's counter to what a lot of our neighbors are now in the straight grain operation, it takes a lot of there's a lot of I's to dot and T's to cross, and there's a pretty broad skill set, and we all think that we're not that, you know, but in the straight grain operation, you know, you can go to your agronomist and they'll give you a recipe for stuff, and there's not nearly as many detailed little wee things along the way as there is in a mixed operation.
Duane, curious about how the current elevated market would impact your crop rotation and the size of your herd. Do you expect to make some changes as a result of better profitability in beef?
I'm glad that I was still, you know, I know that Cole, the grain farmer, And he's got all grain farming buddies. And when half our land base is in forages, it was, I know that he thought that we should probably have a little more canola at 20 whatever bucks a bushel. And it probably would have made us a lot more in that short period. But you know, for me, it's a long game. The whole thing is a long game. And I mean, we're going to be planting trees and doing a lot of things and I guess that's the privilege of owning most of our land base too. You know, if I was renting all our land, and you're not assured of having it, I probably would have put a lot more cash crops down. If I didn't have kids coming back behind me, I might rethink our whole system. Every one of us has a different set of resources. You know, we got our human resource, we've got our land resource, our financial resources. Everybody's working with a different one. That's why we're so, you know, we're different but the same. And so yeah, it's tempting, but I'm in it for the long game.
Thank you very much, Duane. Man, that was a really great presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very good.